Now, I'm pleased to welcome in, keeping the train rolling here, Ollie Broadhead. So he leads the development of Eden's International Project. We're going to talk about some of the amazing work that they do on conservation, biodiversity preservation, and as a visitor destination, focus specifically on environmental education and engagement. So without further ado, Ollie, welcome in, man, to the Global BioFest.
Hey, man. How's it going?
Good. Yourself? Nice to see you. Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm really, really sorry now that I've just come in, and for that last 10 minutes, it sounded so cool. And I have had no time at all this entire weekend to watch any of this. And now I'm going to have to, oh God, next week's crazy, but I'm going to have to find that time.
After next crazy week, you can head online anytime. That's the joy of what we do, is that it lives there forever, and you can follow up, and we'll connect you with cool speakers and, foster those great connections in conservation.
I mean, I'll go into obviously what we do, but I mean, one of the reasons I was really keen to do this was, I mean, previous speaker and everyone else involved is that connections, because, for Eden, we have a huge, we get over 1 million visitors a year. We have, I'll sort of go a bit more into that later, but, and we have many other projects around the world now. That's just our UK base. And because of COVID, we lost a load of stuff. We lost a load of those teams who would be doing that outreach, who'd be finding those brilliant researchers and making those connections and bringing them in. And because the dream with the Eden is not just a visitor center. Eden is a project. And again, yeah, I'll jump across that in a second. But that point of we want to be a convening place, and we want to give a stage to people. And we've just, because of COVID and because everyone's schedules have got crazy and it's thrown everything, I was sort of hoping that I can sort of leverage this a little bit in meetings over the next few weeks, and sort of just getting a few contacts in to sort of just take us back in that direction, because it's something I'm really aware we've lost. I've been at Eden for like 6 years, and we're so good at it up till COVID, and it's just absolutely fallen off a cliff. We don't have those conversations anymore. So I'm really keen to sort of, whatever it might be, engagement, media, whatever, research, bring it together and sort of hope.
Why we're here, man. And honestly, it's been so fun throughout the BioFest. So many people coming back from flights, coming back from conferences, field work that they haven't had the chance to do in 2 years. And so the world's opening up again for these sort of collaborations in education and environmental conservation. So you're coming in at the right time. We're hoping to do all that for you and more, but I'd love to hear a little bit about Eden's story. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, dive in, we can learn a little together.
Yeah. I better share. Cheers, man. I better share the screen, so because I know a lot of people won't know what the Eden Project is. We're very well known locally, but it's definitely easiest if I just show, which will always go slightly wrong. Actually, 3, 2, 1. Let's try this. Is that something you can see?
It's beautiful. It didn't go slightly wrong. It's perfect. There you go.
Okay, so what is the Eden Project? The Eden Project was started 21 years ago now. And we are a massive visitor center, and we don't actually look like this anymore. So we were founded a place called Cornwall down in the southwest of the UK. And it's a huge mining area. Cornwall's has been a mining area for about 2,000 years. So this is a massive china clay pit. When that pit finished its working life, we restored it. So we changed this into what you see before you hear. And what we are is, well, we're the Eden Project, and it's this slightly bonkers, ever-shifting sort of set of values. But ultimately, we're a visitor destination that attracts just over 1 million visitors a year. We've had about 20-something million visitors so far, and that's the Cornish Project. And we tell all things, and our original remit was plants are important. This is going back, it's a different time. We were obviously founded in the mid-90s. It was a time when plants and plant-based ecosystems, those sort of primary producers, were hugely overlooked, and we wanted to just create a place that would wow you with plants in the same way that, well, not quite, but in almost in that same way that going to an amazing nature park or going to something is going to wow you with animals. We wanted to just hit you on an emotional level, on a level of awe and spectacular wonder with plants. So the way we did that was we built the world's largest rainforest in captivity. So that, I better jump forward. So jump forward twice. So the main biome, which is the one you can see on the left, is a huge rainforest. This is one little corner of it. This is another angle. There's almost no way, even with a wide angle lens, you can get this whole thing in. Tiny little people up on the platform there. So we're an utterly vast rainforest. We actually have 3 biomes. We have a arid biome, which covers everything from sort of the Fynbos of South Africa through to the Australian outback, through to the Mediterranean. We've got our rainforest biome, which takes you all the way around the world. It takes you from West Africa to the Amazon to Southeast Asia, etc., etc., etc. It takes you through a real mix of wild and semi-cultivated and cultivated spaces. It's all sort of regionally specific, so you almost feel like you are going on this amazing adventure through around the world of plants. As you can see, it is not what you would expect when I tell people sort of, we're people say, oh, we're big greenhouses or whatever it might be. No, we are a jungle. This is a wild place to go into. As many people watching, will have done field work in these sort of places. You would feel instantly at home if you walk through the doors and hear the heat hits you, the humidity hits you, just because we're the semi-sealed environment. The smell, like that amazing smell of moist earth, just absolutely hits you. We've got birds in there, insects buzzing. There's all this stuff just coming at you. It's dirty, it's messy, it's muddy, it's tangled, it grows far faster than we can actually sensibly garden it. That's a serious problem when it stabs through those lovely panels above you. So we are, for most people, we are a complete sensory overload, which I think goes on to that sort of second point of where we are, because we sit in a really interesting place of engagement, perhaps. It was interesting, our last speaker talking about National Geographic Kids and the work they do is so brilliant. I've actually did an article for them a few years ago, and it was one of the funnest things I've done in that sort of space. And we sit in that sort of similar thing. So we have, to Cornwall, to the region we're based in, we have 4 or 5 million visitors a year. And most of them are just coming for a beach holiday. They're coming because we're a beautiful area of the world. They're just down on holiday, a family getaway. They're not in their minds coming here to have their minds changed about cutting edge environmental issues, or they're not coming there to change the way they act at home. So we are very much about what we call education by stealth. And what I'm sort of, well, there's different ways of looking at that, but what I personally mean by it and what I bring, so I lead the development of our international projects. We've got Eden projects now being built on every continent except Antarctica, sadly, and a few on several continents. So we've got them all over the world. We've got a couple that have opened, so we've had millions of visitors, and a few other places that are now. So we're really building our outreach. We also do online platforms and lots of education. But and what we are trying to do is capture those people who are coming because they've heard you've got to go. It's this, we've lured you in. We've lured you in with these photos of our amazing giant biome bubbles, which are just complete bonkers architecture, and tales of, we've got a vast waterfall, we've got an amazing rainforest, and people are looking for that excitement and that adventure, not knowing perhaps that we're actually, we're all serious environmentalists here, especially, the hardcore group definitely there, and what we're trying to do is find people who might perhaps not feel comfortable in their day-to-day life engaging with these issues. So, for example, we are all bombarded constantly in the news, be it television, be it radio, be it newspapers, be it just conversations that you overhear about statistics, about warnings, about new strange issues, that if you're not in that space, if you perhaps you haven't done a degree, perhaps you have done a degree but it's completely irrelevant, that these are all, there's a lot of confusing, contradictory information. It's impossible to keep up with for any of us who live and breathe that space. It is 10 times, 100 times, infinitely more impossible if you are someone who doesn't feel like that is something you have any knowledge of. It's just this sort of ever changing, warping cloud of just information being yelled at you. So what we are trying to do, what I mean at least by education by stealth, is I want you to go to somewhere like an Eden project, and I want you to go on this journey where you sort of fall in love with some aspects of it, or scared by something, or shocked by something, or surprised by something that lodges itself in the back of your mind, completely subconscious, just lodges there. And that next time, say this is about water scarcity, so on the last big project we're doing water scarcity, we're not shouting statistics at you, we're taking you on a journey through an arid landscape, a world that was once fertile that has now dried up, and the people have had to flee, and they're trying to come back, and there's all this sort of conflicts and stories and interesting, and theatre and performance and music coming into this space. We don't really use the term water scarcity. We don't use desertification, but you're building this picture that this is something that you really had an emotional trigger for, so that next time that you hear that in a conversation, or see an image, or see something on television, or read something, you've possibly for the first time in your life feel like you are welcome, that just on a completely subconscious level, not, oh, I remember the Eden Project said I should be interested in this. It's just some little emotional trigger from that day clicks and just makes you go, oh, I will just pick up that and read that, or I will engage with that conversation, or have a chat, or say to my mate, oh yeah, no, that sounded really important, and just so that you start to snowball. So we want to plant that little seed that starts to snowball around. So because ultimately it's engagement about biodiversity, because we cover so many topics. So we cover different Edens cover things about all things water, all things plants, all things planetary boundaries, ecosystem services. We're careful with that term, but we cover this incredible diversity of topics. And as we know, it's ridiculous to draw sort of lines around these. You can't say here is a water scarcity and here is biodiversity. They're so overlapping, they're so interlinked. So ultimately, what we're trying to create is this just sort of feeling of general connection that it's been said a million times before. I'm sure it's been said 1,000 times even over the last couple of days. We are part of nature. We're connected to nature, connected to each other, connected to other humans who are facing these issues. So, and the way we do that is many ways, but narrative, storytelling, performance, art, whatever it might be. The strongest thing is, as I've just said, is that we actually, our baseline is always to just sort of wow and wonder people by throwing them into totally brilliant, complex, wild feeling ecosystems. Because again, if you're talking about biodiversity, you can talk about all the statistics, X million species, X million threatened, X percentage threatened, home to X and X and X and critically endangered. Ultimately, the way to get in people's head that and we have the great good fortune to be able to do this at scale, and it really only works, I think, at scale, is to just plunge people into a gloriously bonkers and utterly incomprehensibly complex space, and see the water and see the roots. And from then on, you can overlay almost whatever you want. You can overlay a little bit of content here, an interactive thing here, a storytelling alcove, a performance. You can bring that information, those details, almost interchangeably. So what I mean by almost interchangeably, it's like if I was trying to communicate to someone that that say deforestation is an issue because one of the things we might do is lose species that have huge medicinal value, right? So you could give statistics on that, you could do a whole exhibit on that, or you could plunge someone into a rainforest, and just as they're looking at a little flower or something, a little red thing that's blooming outside thing, this is the Madagascar Periwinkle, which is one of my favorites. I'm sure many of you know about, but for me it's always one of those ones that really encapsulated Eden, because I think when I first started working at Eden, one of the gardeners just came over and tapped me on the shoulder whilst I was looking at it, and he said, oh, do you know that flower? And I was like, oh no, I haven't, I've no idea what it is. Sadly a zoologist, not a botanist. And he goes, well, I mean, to put it simply, before that was discovered, most children who got leukemia died, and now most children who get leukemia survive. And I think the statistics actually, before we isolated a couple of compounds from that particular flower, 90% of children with leukemia sadly passed away, and now it is actually exactly the opposite. 90% will recover. So from then on, you have just got this absolute point of contact. Even if that was the only thing that you took away from Eden, that single thought, it branches in so many ways. It branches into deforestation, it branches into biodiversity, it branches into human and nature interdependence, it branches into climate change, perhaps, it branches into all these wonderful ways. Even just one tiny little sort of surprising nugget of information. And I think one of the other things we really want to do, because at the end of the day, as I said, we're in this very odd space that we get 1 million visitors a year, and many of those visitors will, of course, be really quite interested in this sort of space. But you've got challenges both ways. You've got challenges if someone is totally uninterested, but you also have challenges if someone knows a little bit of information, or has, everyone brings in their own opinions, and about how you sort of just break it down, get everyone to leave all of their baggage at the door, whether they think it's a load of bullshit and climate change is made up, or, oh, come on, biodiversity is not really that important, or whether they have really strong opinions about plastic, but totally haven't ever heard about this other thing, because people fixate on what they know. That's the really interesting thing. So if you take someone who's fascinated by whatever it might be, like I'm sure, like I would feel guilty of this as well, but I could take many of you, and you'd go into the rainforest and say you love insects, or you love birds. You'd be looking for the birds. You'd be ignoring perhaps the little mosses or something. So we need to, even for the experts, or in fact possibly even more importantly for the experts, everyone needs to leave their baggage at the door. You need to just go in, and the way we try to do that is sort of two things. I mean, one is sort of narrative. One is that you're going on a journey, and then the second is awe and wonder. And awe and wonder aren't necessarily, we always have a hopeful message, and we are very upbeat, and we try to use a lot of humor and surprise people, because we all know like these are brilliant ways of like sort of lodging memories in your head. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is like generate, just wonderment. So, we hold huge music events throughout the whole summer. We hold, big theatrical performances. We've hosted circuses. We host, we have ice skating in winter. We have all these wonderful things. We have live music within the rainforest. You can sleep overnight within the rainforest or within the medbine. You can eat in these spaces. You can do Halloween in these spaces and be chased around by a giant spider in the rainforest. And these are all things that just, they're so, and I question it with my own job, as you can imagine, all the time. Where's this balance of just silliness versus versus seriousness? That's sort of, where's the line, and that sort of hard debate around, we're dealing often, especially now, like I said, we started with plants, but now of course we're absolutely there trying to communicate as completely and holistically as possible, sort of the various crises affecting us. And that's something we're sort of doing 10 times more in our other projects, which is sort of built from the ground up to be discussing this, whereas this was sort of retrofitting these stories around these plants. Wait, I'm just going to check the time, because I've no idea. I'm a typical rambling type, so just yell in a second. So just this idea of shock, awe, wonderment, surprise, scale, humor, anything like that, to just get people to just distract them a little bit, and then sneak in this little subconscious nugget. And it's almost not a sneaking in. What we found over and over and over again, and I mean, I'm sure I could ask all of you, like, if I asked you to think sort of what your happiest memory is, or perhaps what your earliest memory is, or your last brilliant memory with friends, or all of these sort of moments, people tend to, not always, but it tends to have been outside. It tends to have been in nature. Or if not, it tends to have been with people, with loved ones. Of course it does. It's rarely like I was driving my fast car down a straight road by myself. It's usually something, people, place, outside, possibly nature, possibly the sea, possibly the hills, possibly, these are where people go if you say, where was your last brilliant calm moment? Where was your happiest? Where did you meet where was your first true love, sort of thing, all these kind of things. And everyone does it. It's not just a thing that scientists or people who love these things do. It's almost universal across the board. So what we're almost trying to do is break away the baggage through all means possible, show you glorious complexity and wonder once you have left that baggage behind, blindside you with one or two just sneaky, simple nuggets of information that will lodge somewhere in your head as just fun pub facts for you to remember, but doorways into much wider and more complex discussions, and just ultimately get you to question yourself. So a lot of our most popular, which every time surprises me when you hear what people are most interested in, are one of two things. They're either very simple and very funny, and they lodge, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. Well, I'll wrap up as we do that, because I'm on 22 minutes. Or alternatively, they are asking you to decide or think or feel something. And we do that many ways. We do that with mechanical interactives. Would you choose this, or would you choose this? Or we'll do that with a storytelling where there's a whole story, and where should we go next? Or perhaps that's more children, but perhaps it's not aimed at children. And we do it, of course, with direct questioning. It can be really dramatic to just interrupt people. We actually have some brilliant, not quite storytellers, but performers on site who, you just jump into a conversation or accost someone from behind a bush to just say, something a bit odd and a bit surprising in a slightly theatrical outfit, and it can really get people to jump and jolt and remember in a very different way than perhaps you would with your more boring museum or your more laid out or more formal. And I think formal is something we're really against. Everything about Eden, and I think everything about memories that we really retain, and how we've all, the reason you work in nature is because the reason we work on these sort of things is because we absolutely love nature. The reason, so we're trying to create that remembrance of love of nature. It's often those memories, not just outside, were also moments of freedom. There were moments where you were being a bit of a rebel, or you'd gone a bit off piste. It's that sort of feeling of how do we awaken in people, or remind people that there's sort of this wonderful space of surprise and breaking the rules and being a bit free and being a bit curious and opening up connections. And it is almost as simple as that, as then that is the way you lead in to huge and complex and quite scary stories. And we will use fear, we will use awe, but in more of a theatrical way, in more of a way that we are going to go fight a big baddie, more mythic perhaps than more terror from a sort of distant government proclaiming that X is happening, or so it creates a feeling of involvement and a feeling, the great sort of myths of old, they were about everyone. They're about how the world worked. They're about a world that you were part of worked. They weren't about a thing that is being a decision that has been made over here. So we're really interested in that as a storytelling approach. And anyway, I'll try and shut up now, actually, because I've just been as you can imagine, I'm really sorry, because I've had very little time this week, and I've ended up just trying to throw something together with the hope of anyway. So I'll just close here, because this is, if we're talking about one of our most popular attractions, this was built, it was going to be up for 1 year. It's still there 20 years later. It's called the Plant Takeaway. It's very simple. It's a family, a dog, a man and a woman in a room, and slowly plants are taken away. And the theory is that around the world, all the plants are being taken away. And first the chairs go, then the fruit on the table goes, then the fridge opens and all the orange juice goes, the breakfast cereal vanishes, the windows fall down. Then the famous moment is everyone's clothes fall off and everyone's naked, which is this brilliant moment. This was taken, I think, the month we opened, this photo on the left. And finally, everyone collapses down dead and everyone's eyes pop out. And it's horrifying and brilliant and silly and utterly cartoon. And these figures are about 6 foot tall. And it is one of those things that people remember over and over and over again. And we have spoken now to, this is open 20 years ago, to PhD students, to professors, to brilliant people who still have that as one of their defining silly childhood memories, going, oh, look, a willy, when they were about 5. And just getting this sense that, oh, plants, they're everything. They're in my kitchen. They're everything around us is that. Got my phone off. And, and so with that sense, and that's what we're trying to capture and take forward. Anyway, like I say, I've rambled far too long. What we are, and just to reiterate, what we are is we are a massive project. We are not a visitor experience. We are not a fixed entity. We are constantly trying to update and change and embrace, changing narratives and changing stories and changing information. And we are also a wonderful platform. Like I say, 1 million visitors here in the UK. We've had a couple of million visitors this year on our the international projects, which I lead on. International projects are opening up continually over the next few years. There is a huge amount of space and urgency to all of this. And if anyone, for any reason, is interested in getting in touch and discussing how we're doing things and what we're doing things, we do work with experts, of course, on our research, but it is all too often too narrow because we have had too little time. We've had to go to the experts rather than have this sort of conversation and discussion. And I'm really interested in getting us a little bit back on track to that, because it's definitely something that's fallen off a bit of a cliff post-COVID. So I'd be absolutely thrilled if we can sort of at least have those discussions, and see where that gets. And obviously I will be rewatching all of this stuff. I'm so sorry that I have missed. Sorry, I will shut up there. I've gone far too long.
No, that's great. Ollie, you're good, man. I hope you do get the chance to watch all 60 plus hours by the end. It's been quite the incredible festival. And by the way, if nothing else, the fact that a giant spider chases you through the place and that people jump out from behind bushes to accost you, it makes you want to go more than anything else. So that experiential element that you were talking about certainly inspired me. If I'm in Cornwall, I am heading straight to the place. And again, EdenProject.com on the bottom of the screen. If you guys want to go check out their site, honestly, as we're doing this chat over the next few minutes, it's a really incredible place and thing you've got going there. So kudos to you. I'm curious, you showed at the beginning this like incredible picture of a pit and then the Eden Project all set up. So if people wanted to replicate this sort of, again, wild and immersive thing that you've created, how long did it take to build that? What was that process like? Could that be replicated elsewhere? Or?
I mean, it's being replicated elsewhere. We've got some amazing projects. I'm trying to remember which ones I'm allowed to talk about and which I'm not, but nearly all of them are on restoring usually derelict industrial sites.
Yeah.
Derelict either mining or industrial sites. That's what we're really interested in. It gives us a lot of legitimacy because we have a great deal of concern. Of course, we build big, steel-intensive, carbon-intensive visitor structures. The original one was not carbon neutral. From here on out, in theory, our new builds are going to be carbon neutral, which is, as you can imagine, incredibly complex and thankfully not something that is my department. But you get brilliant legitimacy, of course, by going into a post-industrial, utterly derelict landscape and restoring that. So especially if there's remediation with toxic materials and we can, use our funding and use our financings to clean up that. So our future stuff is in there. It's complicated. It does not take as long as you would think. I think the original Eden project was built within 2 years. And that included, there was no soil in there. We didn't bring in topsoil. We actually manufactured topsoil. We manufactured topsoil from waste, from minerals that were, like all this sort of stuff. So I can't remember, it was 80,000 tons of topsoil plus, was produced from waste to fill that space. It was all either mining waste or food waste to produce the topsoil to fill that space, which of course was 80,000 tons of carbon locked up, or maybe I can't remember if it was 80 or 800, whatever it took to fill that last pit, and that's something we're doing in other places. I mean, it's something we're obviously, if you're going to do it, probably come and chat to people who aren't me, who work at Eden, who know, who are in that area of the sphere. But yeah, it's being done. It can be done. We're doing it. We're doing it again.
Fantastic. Honestly, I grew up beside a place that was being under renovations for like over 2 years. So like one subdivision house took longer than Eden Project, which is pretty incredible and a testament to your work. With this, again, the centerpiece of all the work that you're doing, all this education programming, all the content, everything else is built upon this foundation of immersing people in a rainforest. And so I'm really curious how you source your plants. Do you just have the world's greatest botanists on staff? Are they growing things in-house? Are they taking things from other places in a sustainable way? How do you get the plants?
We have our own, so we have a big nursery. We have been lucky enough we have brilliant botanists on staff. We have, I think, some of the world's greatest on hotline, so we can ring people up, especially the original Eden. So it's not just rainforest. We have a rainforest, and of course we have arid, and we actually have temperate as well. So we have sort of three major biomes, and we have to produce those. There were extensive plant collecting trips around the world with in association with other organizations, and from that we now have a massive nursery. So we produce not all but most of our own plants, and then we have obviously wonderful contacts around the world who can provide usually through their own nurseries. One big one in Holland that they work with us to provide those plants for the future projects and our current project, of course.
It's fantastic. It's again, having all the world's top botanists on hotline is a pretty good problem to have. And again, if people want to check out EdenProject.com, there's so much more there. Social media, so many ways you can learn about the new facilities that are being undertaken. By the way, kudos to you for keeping it very vague and not spoiling the beans on any one being created that we can't talk about just yet. But if people do check out the site, they'll see all those upcoming developments. And Ollie, just such a pleasure having you as part of the BioFest, man. This is a totally unique approach and project that we featured over the course of the last 2.5 days, and so I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you for having me. And of course, anyone get in touch with me through, I forgot to hand over my email, but I can be contacted through Global BioFest, I'm sure. So thank you again.
We'll find you, man. That's what BioFest is all about. Joe has all the contacts. That's half the fun of this whole thing.
There you go.
Keep up the amazing work. Looking forward to visiting in the not too distant future, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Ollie, kudos.